Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I'm your host, Ike. I'm here with Cyrus. Say hello, Cyrus.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. So, gotta start with the oldie but the goodie. Cyrus, what's your favorite dad joke?
What do you call a pile of kittens?
I don't know. What do you call a pile of kittens?
A mountain.
No! As they say, don't make a mountain out of a molehill.
And that's the expression, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard it a time or two over my days. Do you have a favorite underutilized word?
Yeah, the word that's coming, well, it's more of an expression, is ad nauseum. I think that it's just like a pretty good way to explain something that's like just been dragging on forever, and no one ever really uses it. So I think people should start incorporating it into their lexicons.
So a good way of using it would be the ending of Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, goes on ad nauseum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Never ending almost makes you a little bit sick.
Is there a movie, speaking of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, is there a movie that you'll never skip when channel surfing?
Oh, wow. Well, my favorite movie is The Princess Bride, which is a classic, but I feel like when channel surfing movies comes to mind, it has to be like The Shawshank Redemption, right? Like the movie that became a cult classic because it was always on TV. And it's just such a good movie, and I feel like that movie is always on TV. So I feel like I've watched The Shawshank Redemption too many times while channel surfing.
Growing up, what was your favorite book?
I think it is Speaker for the Dead, and it's still probably my favorite book. It's the sequel to Ender's Game. And it's just like a little bit more of an adult take on like Ender Wiggin as a character. If anyone, I mean, most people can probably have read Ender's Game in school, and I really highly recommend it. But it like explores like xenophobia and like, well, like racism and like religion and like death and like, you know, like resources running out, things like that.
The light topics you expect children to easily pick up and understand.
Exactly. Well, I think that's what's interesting about like Ender's Game and like Orson Scott Card. I have issues with him in other ways. He's kind of a crappy person, but in terms of like his writing, like I think he explores really serious issues in ways that like are easy to digest, like because he does it through like a sci-fi setting kind of. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, like these ideas of like genocide and xenophobia and like, you know, our natural resources running out and the world ending. You know what? Actually, these are pretty pretty manageable as long as Ender Wiggins the one dealing with them and not us. So yeah. I like that book a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting how if you do it correctly and you find the right conduit, you can kind of explain anything, not like in a way that it necessarily perverts the material, but like that it becomes digestible for like any age group. Like if you do it properly, assuming that it's not like too complex an issue.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of why I really like sci-fi and fantasy, is that I like reading a lot, and I don't really tend to read a lot of nonfiction because I read the news a lot and things like that. But I feel like I personally like to use reading as like an escape, and I feel like I already read about enough depressing stuff like in my day-to-day life. But it's interesting to have conflict and like characters and like real ideas that really do make you think and make you examine things without me really needing to feel like, yeah, this is a little too heavy to be reading it right before I go to bed.
Yeah, it's that perfect middle ground.
Yeah.
If you had to evacuate your house, what's the first thing you would grab?
I have this teddy bear that I was born like pretty early, so I was like born 2 months early. I was a preemie and only weighed like 4 pounds. Which is funny now. If everyone knows me, I'm like 6'2", 200 pounds, so I'm pretty big compared to that. But I wasn't allowed to have anything in the incubator with me, and my mom couldn't even really hold me or anything. But they let her have like this little teddy bear she bought like at a store across the street in the incubator. And I had kind of like just a tough childhood, and like took that bear with me everywhere. And like I feel like sometimes it was like, you know, my main companion, you know, and so I still have it in my room right next to me.
That's awesome.
And that for sure would be the first thing that I would grab. I always think about that.
That's awesome. What comes to mind when I say underrated?
I think that like just hip hop music in general is pretty underrated. I think a lot of people don't really give it a chance because of like different stereotypes or things like that, or like ideas of what the music's gonna be like. And a lot of what it is just like really cool poetry about like, you know, like working class struggles and things like that over like really good instrumentals and cool production. And it's like there's definitely something for everyone, and it's like a huge genre, which is true of a lot of music genres. So I think more people should be giving different hip hop artists a chance.
Totally. Do you think it has anything to do with like it being sort of musically in the same ballpark for a lot of people that don't listen to it? It's kind of like similar to like rap and like, I don't want to say harder, but more audioly abrasive sort of kinds of music.
Yeah, well, I would say like rap fits under like the subgenre, like under the genre of like hip hop for sure. Like they're kind of like one and the same in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think a lot of people have probably like heard like really vulgar or like rap music with like a lot of swear words and things like that, which I personally enjoy and think there's a time and a place for. But if that's not your cup of tea, that doesn't mean that there's not like really cool like introspective hip hop from people like Kendrick Lamar or like A Tribe Called Quest or things like that will like really make you think and like or like you might just really enjoy because it's like just fun to listen to. Like
Absolutely, yeah. I think for a while growing up that was part of my bias, was that there was this stigma associated with it socially, and then, you know, like some of the people that I assumed listened to it, and like there was like this whole entire exterior hard shell that made it impermeable to like listen to it for me. Not that like in any way hip hop made itself difficult to listen to. It was just that like all the baggage I had kind of brought to the idea of listening to that was there. And then when that got stripped away and like I just heard a song on a bus, or like a friend played me, you know, like their favorite hip hop track, it was just like, oh, I had this wrong as fuck. And it was just completely like off base, and it was just like totally incorrect, and ended up coming, you know, to love it, and rap especially as well. It's just like one of those things that like when you strip away your biases from, you know, preconceived notions, or, you know, other people's biases that they, you know, that you're friends with, that they bring to it, can sometimes get in the way and stuff like that.
yeah, absolutely. I think that experience is probably similar for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
it's cool to hear that is similar for you. And that's kind of the same for me, you know, like I spent a lot of my life just like not I ever really listened to rap music, or a lot of people will be like, oh, I like every type of music except for like rap or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm always like, dang, well, do you ever even listen to it?
When did you first start listening to like rap and hip hop?
In high school, I think like I started listening to it a lot, like my freshman year. Funny enough, my grandpa who raised me actually listened to Kanye West and recommended him to me, and that's like still one of my favorite artists.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's introduced like a lot of really. He's a musician and listens to like every kind of genre, and has showed me a lot of really cool music.
That's dope. Do you remember your first kind of like big hip hop song or rap song that like really changed your mind, that you still enjoy to this day, or enjoyed for a long time when you like first got into that genre?
Oh yeah. I just remember like the first time I was really listening to music, and it was like, I think like Good Kid, Mad City, like the album by Kendrick Lamar, just like listening to that. And like, it's kind of like, it's like the story, for those who haven't listened to it, of like Kendrick Lamar, who's like, you know, Grammy Award winning artist. He's in like the Library of Congress, I'm pretty sure, and everything. And it's just like him like growing up in Compton and hanging out with his friends. And it's kind of like, he tells this narrative like through the form of an album. And it just is like, it explores so many interesting ideas while being like really fun and catchy to listen to. And I was like, wow, this is like really, really dope. Because I listened to that album a lot when it came out, and like my love and appreciation for it, I think, has only grown since then. And I mean, basically every song on that album is great. But funny enough, the song that I think is the least representative of the album, Backseat Freestyle, is the song I listen to probably the most frequently, because it's, you know, it's just a banger. But it's like the whole point of it is it's kind of like, it's Kendrick freestyling out of the context of the theme of the rest of the album, and it's just like a vulgar, like party rap song kind of. But I love that song. But so I guess that's the one that sticks out to me, ironically.
That's tremendous. Over the years, is there a best piece of advice you've got that like really kind of has stuck with you?
I think letting yourself feel things is the big one for me. I think that I used to have a lot of time, I get a lot of, like a lot of people get anxious or get bummed out. And I used to spend a lot of time having this conflict within myself of being like, you know what, I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't feel anxious or stressed or sad because my life is X, Y, or Z, or because X, Y, or Z. But you know what? I don't have control over my emotions to that degree, and no one does. Like sometimes you just feel sad or stressed out. And I think when I started letting myself feel that way and not having that conflict within myself, I started feeling a lot happier. And I don't remember who originally gave me that advice. I think it was probably, my therapist at some point in my life. But it has really helped me for sure. So,
yeah, that's one that it has taken me a long time to hear, like, and utilize as well. It's like, just because you feel something doesn't mean you are something. And like, everybody feels most everything, I think, is like one of the other big ones that kind of goes with that for me is, like most people, they feel a certain way towards X, Y, or Z, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so bad, because we don't know what other people are thinking or feeling, And so we like internalize this, and we kind of end up subjugating ourselves, being like, well, I think this, therefore I'm a bad person. It's like, you're not a bad person just because you're, this uncontrollable part of you brought this to your forefront. You're a bad person if you act on it, potentially, depending upon what it is. But if you feel a certain way, it's like, yeah, there's no point in like trying to remove a feeling from you, because that's like not, like you're saying, it's not something you're under control over. All you can do is deal with it when it's brought to you. And so by, accepting it, you're accepting yourself, and you're able to move forward and become a better person.
Yeah, exactly. That is how I think of it. And it's like, you can only feel and think the things that you do, and it's like they're part of you. And it's like, it's really hard to have like self-love or like not be angry if you're like literally telling yourself like the way I'm feeling is like wrong, Yeah. So it's
a slightly different kind of bend on it, but I don't know in what part of the Buddhist text it's in, but at one point Buddha goes and sits underneath a tree and contemplates the meaning of life or death or whatever. And he is besought by this like evil demon or spirit or whatever like that, while he's trying to like meditate and get to like the highest form of existence or whatever. I'm paraphrasing, and if I'm getting any part of this wrong, I do apologize to those who are of this faith, but this is the story as I know it. So he's sitting underneath this tree, like very similar to like, Jesus in the desert for 40 days. And he's being, bothered by this evil spirit as, he's trying to concentrate. And instead of pretending like that spirit doesn't exist, he accepts its existence and just says, I see you, and then goes back to meditating, which I think is kind of similar for me in this circumstance that we're talking about, where it's like, you have this bad thought, or you have this thought that you wouldn't prefer, it comes into your brain. And one of the best things you can do, it's kind of like, like a kid who wants attention. Like, you don't neglect the kid, but you don't give into their, there's like this kind of medium road that you can take where the kid's attention is, is satiated in a way that is not contributing to their behavior, but like not stoking the fire either. It kind of like mitigates it a little bit. It's like a best path kind of scenario where you're able to do both things of, you dampen this thought. It doesn't continue to get inflamed and like overtake you, but at the same time, you don't hate yourself by like, pretending it doesn't exist or like squishing it down into oblivion. Like, you accept it. It's there. It's part of you, but it isn't you.
Yeah, exactly. I love that you're so familiar with this, because it's like, that's even giving me new ways to think about this same idea, which is something I still am working on in my day-to-day life,
Oh, same. Yeah.
Stuff. That's awesome. Yeah.
It's freaking, it's hard as shit to like accept yourself even at your most like obscure, weird, and like perverse. It's so annoying.
Yeah. Yes, because I definitely, I get in weird headspaces and stuff, and it's like, this isn't me, but every headspace I'm in is still me, and I still have to be there.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite anecdote that you like to tell?
Yeah, so we have a mutual friend, Michael Clifford, and so when you asked me this question...
Also been on the podcast.
He comes to mind. And the quick one that's good, and I kind of have two about Cliffy I have to tell, because they're both travel related and traveling to Magic the Gathering tournaments together. So one is that we're like going to Vegas and we're playing like this Team Trios tournament. And Cliffy, it's Sunday, right? And Cliffy's like, oh, by the way, guys, I have like a math test tomorrow, tomorrow Monday morning at like 9. And we're like in Vegas, like drove there and lived like 12 hours away from home. And we're like, whoa, what, dude? And he's like, yeah, well, it shouldn't be a big deal unless like one of us wins it. Cause it's like, then you have to like stay for so long. Anyways, I end up winning this tournament with my team and we're like doing the winner's interview. And I'm just so freaking juiced on winning this tournament that I just drive home the whole way to Vegas. I think basically like, or from Vegas, like totally wide awake. It's Isaac's car, I'm pretty sure. And Cliffy's just studying in the back with his flashcards with the light on. He makes it like just in time for his test, gets a C. I pass out. That's a good Cliffy anecdote. Later on, a few months later,
you're missing one of the bigger stepping stones of that trip home.
Oh, what is that?
We had a flat.
Wait, really?
Yeah, this is the trip where we're driving back from Vegas and we got a flat. It's me, you, Jay, Cliffy, Nathan Stewart, also been on the podcast, and you. And we're all driving back and we get a flat sometime after. I think it's after we picked up McDonald's, and shakes got spilled all over my front seat by someone in this podcast. And then we're driving along and we just get a flat. And
dude, I totally forgot about that.
And I was like kind of strapped for cash because I was going to school at the time and was unemployed. So we're all kind of like a little light on cash. And then it's just like, we need to do this. Like, we had two options of either staying the night and waiting until morning and then going to the shop, or calling in and like paying a premium to get a tire put on at like 1 a.m. or whatever, 2 a.m. And I was like, I'm fine waiting till this hour. And Michael's like, I kind of need to make it back, but maybe I can. And then like, we ended up making a group decision and like all chipped in and for a new tire that I still believe is still in my car, and went and got that and floored it back. And like, yeah, like people barely.
Wait, I definitely was not a part of that. I don't remember that at all.
You were 100% there.
That's funny. I remember driving back, but maybe that's like after you guys dropped me off in like the Bay or something. Because
no. This is way before the Bay. You might have been asleep for part of it, but I'm pretty certain this is the way back because, yeah, like it had to be because it was me, Jay, and Cliffy for sure. And like I'm trying to think of other long trips that involved that I took around the time with those three. I think this is like the only time that happened because it was like super far out. So I think this is like after we would have passed like the pea soup place or whatever.
Yeah, that does sound familiar. Okay, I also think I probably took a break at some point and Jay drove.
You drove, I think, in the beginning, and then I think it was me for a little while, and then Jay like did the rest because Jay is a freaking animal.
Yeah, he's a juggernaut.
he's a beast.
Okay, one more good Cliffy story is that we're in Virginia and Cliffy has this thing of sunscreen because he had just gotten like surgery and had to like put like this lotion on his scar. And the people are like, hey man, like you can't take the sunscreen off the plane. And he's just like, okay, well I'll show you. And rather than like throwing it away, he like coats his entire body in sunscreen. Like wearing like this tank top, and I'm just like standing next to him and I'm like, dude, we're gonna like miss our flight. And I just watch him stand there in security, and he's like, his skin is like white covered with sunscreen.
It just puts white face on his white skin.
Yeah, and his like arms, his chest, everything is at his ears, and I'm just like, hell yeah, man, you freaking showed
that 70 cents of value.
Well, no, sunscreen's expensive, and he made a good point, but they were just being ridiculous. He's like, well, the funny part is that it was like our return flight, and he's like, dude, I already made it through security. How are you guys like stressing about this? Like the sunscreen, like they already let me through one time, and then they had it, yeah, because he needed it. But he's just a great person to travel with.
It's such a Cliffy thing to stand on principle over like value, or sometimes principle intrinsically included in value. You just reminded me of this other one. I don't think you were there for this one because I think you were living in the Bay at this point, but we went to Soul Food after one of the tournaments in the Bay Area, and we're sitting around like on our way back. So we stopped by and we're getting, a victory dinner or whatever, and sitting there eating soul food outside. And this car I think in parking and getting out of the parking space in front of like the little soul food pickup area, scratches another car and then just tries to leave. And we're like, oh, dude, hey, that's not cool. We're letting them know they scratched the car. And they clearly see that we are like, they clearly see us telling them. And like, they keep moving on. It's like, okay, they're just going to leave. And so Era's there, takes a picture of the license plate, you know, day over. Nope. Clifford chases them down the street and tries to get in front of their car and like bar them from leaving. And we have to all shout at him to get him out of the street because they're like, this person is technically committed a criminal act and is trying to flee. It's like, we don't need to see our friend get run over because they scratched somebody else's car. But Clifford is hell, but like he's like on the hood of their car at one point, like slapping their vehicle, trying to get them to stop, and they're just like not having it. We have to shout.
Citizens arrest.
Yeah, basically.
I can't believe I haven't heard that story. I had no idea that was going there. That's
so amazing.
Funny.
We're all just yelling at him. Like, I mean, he's the youngest of us, but we were yelling at him like he was a kid running around with a knife at like a birthday party. We're like, come here. It's just like really took all of us to shout at him to get his like full attention to get him out of the street so he didn't die.
God, yeah, I love that guy. One of my closest friends for sure.
Cliffy's the best. If you could work any of the jobs you've done over the course of your life, but get paid the same as a job where you made the most, which job would you work?
I've only had one job, really. I mean, I've only had 2 jobs, which is working at In-N-Out Burger and working at a nonprofit, and I think that I prefer In-N-Out on both fronts. So,
wow,
I make a lot more, and also think my job is a little bit better. Right now, I'm currently applying to law school, though, so I think that I'll prefer that job probably on both fronts once I complete that task. Indeed. I've been working at In-N-Out since 2014, so I think, you know, it's been a while.
You've had enough burger juice going through your hair.
Yeah, especially considering the fact that I do not eat meat or cheese. I would prefer to not spend all day cooking cheeseburgers. But yeah, it's a good job. So,
what do you regret not having done or tried before you graduated high school?
I wish I would have done more things like drama or like improv or things like that, because I was just like, I feel like I got just kind of like naturally like athletically gifted in the sense that I'm like a big, strong, fast person and went through puberty pretty early. So I got really into sports when I was in high school and was like pretty good at them. But I'm also like, now that I'm an adult, I don't know. Like, I think I would have gotten more out of things that I'm now more interested in, like, and things I was interested in then. Like, I was still more of a nerd and would have liked to do more of the stereotypically nerdy activities like drama and improv and things like that, and not focus so much on sports, I guess.
Do you think that had something to do with the fact that sports ended up becoming like such a like trigger point for you? Like, do you think you would say that if you had not gone on, because you ended up getting a scholarship because of sports to school, and then like all this pressure was put on you and it ended up affecting you mentally, right? Do you think that would be the same as if, or in the circumstance where that wasn't like where you were about it as much as you were, but it didn't become such a, you know, heavy point of focus in your life? Like if you hadn't gotten the scholarship, went to school anyway and continued to do it, do you think that you feel the same way?
Small correction. I actually was a walk-on. I didn't have a scholarship, but it was still stressful to be on the team at a big D1 school anyways. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Well, I got a lot out of the sports, but I think the thing is it's more so looking back in hindsight as an adult and like what skills I find useful in that realm. And the thing that is like about sports is I found like being on a team, being a leader, like working hard. Those are things that I still use today, you know, in work and life. But I guess that I'm just like would have preferred to network and like be involved in things that I personally find more interesting now. But I wasn't necessarily as interested in those things at the time. So, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. But I guess in school, for high school and college, I wish I would have just done more clubs, activities, like spent less time playing Magic Online, and just like met more people for both is what I think. And I think I don't necessarily regret doing sports. I just wish I would have done more in addition to sports, or instead of some of the.
You wish you had taken away some of the percentage allocation for of your time for sports and like spent it elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the most bizarre fact you know to be true?
Okay, so this is one that my high school history teacher told me because he was like obsessed with Teddy Roosevelt, and like we had like a whole unit on Teddy Roosevelt. But
damn,
I think it was like after Teddy Roosevelt like lost an election, he became like a secretary in the Navy to like to someone who was very powerful. But this person was sickly and was just like, you know what, Teddy, like I'm just gonna let you answer my calls, and like you're gonna like do a lot of stuff for me. So anyways, one day while this person, and it's kind of like The Office, like he's not assistant, you know, of the Navy. He's assistant to the general or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, he's really just the secretary. And they call and they're like, hey, should we bomb these people? Like should we bomb like I think there was like the Spanish War, and the guy's not there, and Teddy's like, yeah, you know, I just do it. Anyways, and ends up totally winning the battle because of it, right? And then the secretary, the general comes back and he's like pissed at Teddy, and he's like, dude, like you cannot do that. And he's like, yeah, I know, I'm in trouble. Anyways, couple months later or whatever, this happens again. Teddy's the only one in the office, like, hey man, like we don't know what to do. Like there's the general there, and Teddy's like, yeah, he says bomb him. They win the battle again. This time, they can't even really be mad because now at this point, Teddy has basically won 2 battles for them just by being, you know, the secretary. But they also don't really want him to be there anymore. So they're like, you know what, we're going to get rid of you, send you to like the Rough Riders, which if anyone knows about the history of Teddy Roosevelt, he just goes on basically him being like he lost an election. Because of that, kind of just became like a secretary, then lucked into like this like major like political military victories that then eventually led to him being president of the United States. So I just think that that's kind of a funny thing where it's like he was just some guy's secretary and then ended up being the president.
Yeah, you don't know that you won't end up where you want to be just because of where you are. It's like, yeah. He did not want to be secretary to this guy, but you know, through serendipity and just being who he was, things worked out, I guess. I don't know. It's always interesting looking at those moments, then looking at your own life, and like depending upon what your personality is. Like there are times where I look at that and be like, I'll think of myself as a failure because like I haven't like, you know, ascended to the rank of president yet, or you know, like whatever, like serendipitously like, you know, moved up the ranks. And then other times you look at it and be like, yeah, I've still got a chance to be like an astronaut or something like that. You know, like maybe this guy falls out, breaks his knee getting out of his like, you know, limousine, and then I accidentally like fall in, and then yada yada yada. I end up on the moon. Like,
yeah, you never know when your phone call will come, and so you just be ready to seize the day, like Teddy, I suppose.
Just be ready to say bomb him. Just like you pick up the phone.
Yeah, no second thought. Just have that bombs away always.
Have that clutch response in the bag.
Absolutely.
Fill in the blank. This weekend was so great. I spent 13 hours
playing in a convention hall with other people, really, really sweaty and stinky, and playing cards.
Yeah, that sounds like a great weekend.
Yeah, I'm lucky I don't have a sense of smell, basically, because I have like a deviated septum, and just never really had a strong one. And I think that was a pretty big advantage in my time as a competitive Magic the Gathering player, for sure.
Huh. I wonder... So I'm not bagging on your choice. Are you vegetarian or are you vegan?
I'm vegetarian, but I very rarely eat other things that are... I very rarely eat dairy or eggs. Yeah.
I wonder if that contributes to your ability to do it. Like, because like you are, not that vegetables can't be made to taste very good, or that, you know, you don't necessarily prefer, or I don't remember how words work. Vegetables can taste great, and some people prefer vegetables and think they taste amazing just on their own. But I wonder if like not being able to smell has like reduced your taste, and so it doesn't make you like miss the taste of meat.
Absolutely.
You think so?
That's funny. I wasn't exactly sure where you were going with that, but I agree with you. I also drink like black coffee, and like drinking like alcohol like straight and stuff like that's pretty easy for me. I have like a very underdeveloped sense of taste, and like it's pretty easy, I think, for me to be vegan and like eat really healthy because most foods taste relatively the same to me already.
Okay, cool.
Which is a little bit depressing. Yeah, it's a little bit depressing, but it's been like I've accepted that reality for sure.
It's depressing in like an artistic sense. It's got to be so empowering in like a financial and physical sense, though. Like the amount, if everything's going to taste the same, you can save so much money and get like good for you nutrients that wouldn't taste as good. But like if you don't know the difference, then like you're just like effectively up value. And also you're going to like take better care of your body much easier. It's like, you know, like so much of one of like the bigger problems, at least in my experience and talking to other people in the United States, is that like a lot of like really healthy food kind of tastes like chalk the way it's prepared. There's like ways to prepare it where it tastes really good, but that either takes time, money, or a lot of like knowledge and training. All of these are things that you have to like focus on. But if your flavor palette is reduced and like that kind of sphere isn't quite as large and it gets kind of like shrunken down, it's so much easier and so much cost effective to eat healthier.
Yeah, maybe all food just kind of tastes like chalk to me, so why not eat the healthier chalk? But yeah, I think it has been beneficial, but yeah, it is kind of funny that the thing is I can kind of remember I used to have a more developed sense of smell, I think, and I remember and taste. I remember what some foods taste like more, for
Interesting.
Sure. But I spend a lot of time thinking about it. I guess that's a random fact about me, is that I don't smell things super well, or taste, because they're related.
Yeah. What's something you see in someone else that makes you want to be friends with them?
I think people who are really attentive and listen when you notice them having conversations with other people. I think that a lot of people, especially in communities with like, you know, successful and intelligent people, tend to like really talk just to talk. And that's something that I used to have a really hard time with. And I value myself now on like an ability to listen. And I also like value friends who I notice like really are attentive and listen to their friends, like you're doing today on this podcast. So yeah, I guess that's something I look for in my friends, is the ability to listen when it's needed. And I also, you know, I love to listen. So just people I can have good conversation, I guess.
Yeah. Well, good. It sounds like good, like authentic, real conversation. Not, you know, like, wait, I think there's a line in Fight Club where it's like one of the reasons that the main character keeps going to these support groups was because that like the other people in the support group are earnestly listening and they're not just waiting for their turn to talk.
Yeah, exactly. Also a great movie.
Fantastic film. Apparently also really happened with the writer, Chuck P. Like went to, like that's something he like really did and just found that experience like in a semi-organic fashion. Of just
that's
like
wild.
Yeah, it's freaking
going to the
crazy.
support groups.
Yeah, he went to a couple. I think it happened kind of by accident, or he went with a friend and then just kind of got addicted and kept going. I remember listening to an interview where he was talking about it.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I've read a few of his books. The book for Fight Club is quite a bit different than the movie, or not quite a bit different, but it's still pretty good. But I actually think the movie is better.
He also agrees with you, interestingly enough. There's an interview where he's talking about it. He's like, I think they did. I don't know if he said it was better, but he really thoroughly enjoyed it. He wasn't somebody that, you know, they murdered his baby. They're like, no, they just did something different with it. And I think they did a great job.
Well, I think what they did really well is that Fight Club, the novel, is more of a short story in the sense that it's like 120 pages, which is like shorter than a lot of things they would adapt into films. And I think that the screenwriters did a really good job of adapting it and like fleshing it out and like adding to the characters in a way that was pretty authentic to Chuck. I don't know how to say his last name.
Yeah, that's why I said Chuck P. I was like, I'm not gonna step all over that guy's last name. Enough people have done that already. Yeah, it's interesting when they do it with short works. Coming up, there's a piece I read that was from the New Yorker called "Escape from Spiderhead," which was like a 3-part short story. I think it's like collectively like less than 60 pages, and they're turning it into a feature film. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how much they have to do to pad that, or what they do to make that one work.
Yeah, I think that the adaptation of you know, like of text to movies to film is always really interesting, because it's like you either have to flesh it out or cut it down, and it's like a pretty interesting endeavor by the director, where it's like I feel like it seems like it could be easier in a lot of ways as a writer, obviously, to, you know, work on an already existing story, but it's always interesting to see like how the writers and directors like make it their own and things like that. And I think a lot of people tend not always like movies that are based off of books, like, oh, it's so much worse in the book. But I think at the very least, those things are always interesting to see how they compare and like what this person's vision of someone else's art was, and like how we can accept that as being like an equally valid piece of art, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely its own interesting bag, to be sure. Is there something you wish you had started sooner that you have since begun, but, you know, just wish you had, or wish you have had more time? I don't know how to say that. It's weird.
Yeah, I've been like meditating a lot over the last couple like year, and I think that that's something I had always heard like benefits of it, but I can like definitely say I think it has like changed my life and helped me be like more mindful, introspective. That some of the things we were talking about earlier, like letting thoughts pass by, just like understanding myself. And I just I do like, I personally use like the Headspace app, but there's like different ones like Calm, where you can just like meditate. And I just spend like 20 minutes a day, like really getting like a feel for how my body and my mind and feeling and things like that. And it's like similar to a lot of, you know, almost any culture or like religion has like prayer or meditation. And I think that a lot of people could benefit from just like really taking a look within themselves. I wish I would have started doing that a lot earlier than in my 20s. I think I would have understood a lot more about myself then. Is
the one that you're doing mostly like focusing on your breath, or what is the TLDR on the way you choose to meditate?
Yeah, so this one's like, the one I use is like a guided one. So it starts off like on your breath, and then it'll have like, it has like different packs of like courses of like things to focus on. So like right now I'm doing like the appreciation one. So it's like, it just like tells you like focus on like, it's like, hey, like today while you're focusing on your breath and like scanning down your body, and it has different like tricks to get into a meditative state kind of. It's like focus on like things that you really appreciate and like what you appreciate the most today. And I personally find that pretty helpful to have cues, but I do think that any form of meditation, probably, or prayer, or whatever works for you is pretty helpful. But yeah, I guess I wish I would have just started earlier with taking time to myself to think.
Awesome. On the flip side of that coin, what do you wish you had ended sooner?
Yeah, I wish I wouldn't have like played football. I mean, like playing football was cool and I was really good at it. But I remember like I would just get like, I had like head injuries, neck injuries, wrists, ankle, knee.
How long did you play?
I only played for 4 years. I only played in high school. And then I got pretty badly hurt my senior year and decided to focus on track instead. And that is what I ended up going to college for. As a thrower.
Is it just like looking back, hindsight wise, you wish you just stopped in your junior year because you got hurt in your senior year, or do you think it would have been?
I wish I just would have not played football. Basically, I mean, like that. It's just like really bad.
You wish you ended after tryouts, just like tried it out,
yeah.
And like, nah, son.
Yeah, or like maybe after my I don't know. Like it's hard to quit something like that, but it's just like my sophomore year, that's when I started getting pretty badly hurt because I was just like, I was pretty good, but also like I was just like pushing myself past the limits of my body for sure, and like through my injuries, and like. I wish I would have just rehabbed my ankle properly and stuff, because I remember being like, oh, whatever, I'll just like deal with all these injuries when I'm older. And I was thinking older would be like when I'm an old man, not like when I'm in my mid-20s and like my body hurts pretty bad all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If you could go back in time and tell yourself one sentence, what would it be and when would it be?
It gets easier is what I would tell myself. And I think that I would probably tell myself when I was like 7 or 8, I had like just kind of like a tough childhood, and like had like my parents lose custody, like my parents lose custody of me around that age, and like dang, I spent like a lot of time just being like a really angry, sad kid, and like getting in fights at school and like crying and missing school and like just like having like a tough childhood. And it's like it really felt like it's like that's the only life you've ever lived, and you've lived a pretty short life when you've had like childhood trauma. So it's like if your entire childhood has been trauma up to that point, that is like the reality, you know. And it's like I remember just being like, how can I possibly like make it another like 8 years, which is a weird thing to think of at the age of 8, you know?
Yeah.
And really think about for real, like about like, I didn't want to be like alive anymore. And I wish I could just go back and be like, hey man, like all these things you think about, like where you like want to be an adult and you like want to be successful, or like that you want to be like a hardworking, intelligent person. Like you want to be a good person. You don't want to be like your parents. Like, that is going to happen, and it does get easier and it gets better. So I know that was a lot longer than one sentence, but
totally.
I think I could have really used that for sure at that age, and just used an adult just telling me that, you know, things were going to be okay. And I think in general, But I could still use that today. Just stuff gets better for sure. Like every year of my life, I think has gotten easier in some ways and harder in some ways. But overall, in the grand macro space of my life, it has improved overall as time has gone on.
The directions of accomplishing some things in life is just give it a tad of time, is usually like the kind of end bit, or like one of the through lines that I see in a lot of like kind of successful headspace decisions, is just like remove immediacy. That is like very rarely is that like the thing. It's like you need to be stalwart and you need to just continue to exist, and that is like winning a lot of mental battles, is just not giving up on life or not giving up on this dream, and just like continuing to pursue forward. And sometimes continuing to pursue forward is just standing still until you're ready to take the next step, and just like not stepping backwards, not stepping away, and not giving up.
Patience is a virtue for sure, and that could include even when you're like fighting for your own life or whatever, just trying to get through the day. Like it doesn't have to be like you're gonna go be an astronaut or the president, but sometimes it's a pretty big accomplishment just to get out of bed for sure, and like giving yourself the capacity to do that, and knowing that it gets easier day to day is and it's okay if it doesn't get easier every day either too.
Totally. All right, before we throw it to our first break, if you could make sure listeners of this podcast heard one song, which song would it be?
Rap Snitch Knishes by MF Doom is the song that I would pick.
I know you're a big fan of MF Doom. Why does this one stand out compared to all the others?
It's from my favorite MF Doom album, which is Food, and it just like features this character, Mr. Fantastic, which is MF Doom is a hip hop artist, recipes from mostly based out of New York City. He does like a lot of cool like alternative hip hop things in like the early 2000s. I think the song especially is just like really interesting, and in terms of production and like the flow and everything, which is like what I like the most about MF Doom is like kind of wacky, unique skits and everything. But also he features his friend Mr. Fantastic, which is like, in my opinion, this is like one of the best features I've ever heard in any rap song. And it's just like his friend who doesn't really have almost any other music. Like he just featured on a couple of Doom tracks and that's it. But I think that for sure I listened to this song and it dug me down to the rabbit hole of MF Doom, which I know you've also gone down, where I was like, I want to listen to so much of this guy's music now. So and I think not enough people listen to MF Doom. Speaking of underrated from earlier.
Totally. All right. And with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy our totally real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy Rap Snitch Knishes by MF Doom, or just fast forward. Either way, see you in a jiffy. Have you ever just looked at fried carbs on a plate and thought, I need to eat those, but it doesn't taste all that appetizing? Introducing catsup. Catsup is a sugary and red syrupy paste that'll overshadow any unappreciated taste. Simply douse the unpreferred tasting object and ingest. Mmm. Thanks, catsup. And welcome back, folks. Here with Cyrus Corman Gill. Cyrus, what's your passion, brother?
Hey, friends. The thing I'm the most passionate about, I suppose, would be, I mean, we've alluded to it a lot in this podcast already, which is like listen to records and listen to music. I have like a pretty decent vinyl record collection, and so does my grandfather who raised me. And I just love that it's like you get to listen to the whole vision of this artist. And I think a lot of artists, well, most artists, put as much thought into the album as they put into each song, like the organization of the album and like the production and like the theme and things like that. And so I love to just sit down and listen to like a record on some speakers and like really experience the album. And like, it's just cool to like have it be like a physical piece of media that you're listening to. Like those are real grooves on the record, and it's like, you got like the art on the cover and everything, the record jacket. So the record sleeve. So that's my passion. How
many physical vinyl records do you own?
I'm not sure. I have like a Discogs, but
ballpark. Let me think. We hitting triple it?
Yeah.
Oh, triple.
I don't think triple digit. My collection is for sure worth a lot, but my grandpa's collection I know is like would not even fit like in almost like one room. It feels like there's thousands there. Jeez. And then we share a lot of records too. And then my collection is a budding one. I've been working on it for about 10 years now, but still budding. And it's hundreds, but not quite thousands.
Strong triple digits.
Yeah.
When did you get or buy your first vinyl record?
I think it was actually when I was for my 13th birthday. Funny enough, that's the same birthday that, like 2 weeks before I like slipped off like an inflatable water slide and like snapped my leg in half.
Oh,
But yeah.
Jesus.
And so I don't know if you remember, I think probably when you first met me, I had a leg cast, but this is so long ago now at this point. But yeah, and so I just got a record player for that birthday like a couple weeks later and spent a lot of time that summer listening to records and playing Wrath of the Lich King, the World of Warcraft expansion, because I had
that might be the most nerdy thing I've ever envisioned, is somebody in a leg cast listening to vinyl records while playing WoW.
Yeah, that's how I spent the summer. That's how I spent my the year of 8th grade, because I couldn't go to school because my leg was so badly broken. I had to like stay at home and have like an in-home tutor and everything. It was awesome. So I just mostly just listened to Hello WoW, or played Hello WoW and listened to a lot of music.
Do you remember what the first album was?
God, I think it was probably a Dead Kennedys record. I was really, really big into I really like Dead Kennedys still, but I probably like Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death by Dead Kennedys is going to be my guess.
Nice. Do you prefer speakers or headphones? Or is it just two different experiences?
I think it's like, yeah, kind of two different experiences. Like, I think the thing is that speakers are just kind of loud and like other people can hear them and stuff too. So it's like, obviously, like I really love it. I think it's kind of like a more intimate experience when you're listening on headphones, I guess is my answer. And I really like that you can really hear the words and feel connected kind of to the artist and the music. But I do think that the music is better listened to on speakers, because I think part of the music is like the bass and everything, and like being able to feel the music. And the artist does do that intentionally. And the vibrations of the music and like the sound waves like going over you are a real part of the experience. And so I guess speakers are, superior, but I personally think I probably listen to headphones a lot more than speakers, just out of convenience and personal enjoyment.
If you were going to try to convince me on getting into vinyl, what would be your elevator pitch for why I should switch from like digital like formatting to listening to vinyl?
I don't know that I would necessarily recommend it to anyone. I just think that if there's like an album that you really love, like I think probably most people who like music have an album that they like love. And it's like, you kind of want to like hold that thing and listen to it. And it's like a CD is not the same. It's this little tiny thing. And it's like, if you're just like listening to it on a streaming service or you own the digital thing, it's like, I don't know, like in terms of just like owning this thing that means a lot to you, like a record is the best way. It's like got the art. You could sit down and listen to it. You can hold it. You can, sleep next to it if you want. All that is possible with vinyl records.
Do you remember the first album you were talking about? Your grandpa has so many. Do you remember the first one that he played for you?
He was just always playing music constantly growing up. I think that like he's also a musician, so he plays the piano, and things that like really stick out to me would be Johnny Cash. Growing up listening to like a ton of Johnny Cash and like Ray Charles, and just like really growing like an appreciation for just like fun guitar and piano, because so my grandpa plays too, and like while singing along and like lots of energy. And so I would say Johnny Cash would be the one that I can really think of. Probably like Live at Folsom Prison is like a classic Johnny Cash record that's really fun to listen to as like a whole experience.
Righteous. Slight tangent. What did your grandpa think of Johnny Cash's later albums, like the last 2 or 3, where he started doing like covers and a little bit more kind of heavier material?
I think he liked all of it. I like all that stuff too. But I think that's one thing I like for sure about my grandpa's taste in things, is I think he really appreciates things within an artist's own catalog, and like, but also like doesn't always compare it against their own work, like it's likes to see it evolve. And he seems like he likes just like every kind of music. But I think we both thought that Johnny made good music to the end for sure.
Awesome. Where do you come down on the argument of like cherry picking and listening to songs versus listening to the album from stem to stern?
Yeah, like anyone, I have like playlists, and I think that what's interesting is like listening. I mean, I like to listen to albums. It's my bias. Like I listen to records, and most of the way I listen to music is consuming albums to answer your question. But I mean, I think that like making playlists is like a way to express yourself in an art form, and the same with like singles. And listening to all that. And like the art of like singles has become really interesting with people like Lil Nas X, and like the way that music is made. Like people are trying to make hooks that are gonna be sold as singles and like be on TikTok or like be on YouTube or things like that. Or it's like almost like the ringtone era all over again with like Soulja Boy, which is funny. And so I think that we're losing a little bit of the album now with people having so much of a focus on streaming and singles, because also it's more beneficial for album sales to have a really long album, because if someone's just going to stream it on like Spotify or Apple Music and go all the way through, you make more money that way. So it seems like people are like suddenly, they're not making a succinct, compact, like intentional albums, if you know what I mean. I think that art form's getting lost a little bit. But
do you think that's just part of the times, or is that kind of, like things come in and out of flavor, right? So is this something that you feel like is getting lost to time and like you're saddened by it, or is this just like part of like the musical, societal process?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think it'll always be there in the sense that like people still listen to vinyl records, even though they're essentially entirely obsolete in every way, But I think that like just TikTok being really popular, and I don't want to sound like a grouchy old man or anything. I listen to all that music too. I use TikTok.
TikTok and give gob goob.
Yeah, old man yells at cloud is how I feel right now. But those damn TikTokers and Lil Nas X. No, I really like all that music and think it's beautiful and awesome. I just like also really appreciate albums. But I think that like Lil Nas X just released an album. I thought that was pretty good. So, yeah. So I prefer albums for sure though. I just think it's like cool to look at the artist's whole like theme. To me, it's like watching like an episode of a TV show versus like freaking watching the whole thing. Like there's episodes of The Office that are so funny and everything, but then I love, but that doesn't really compare to me to like the overall theme and like the feeling I got of like watching Breaking Bad or like The Sopranos and like this piece of art that went on forever and like every episode was connected. And that's how I feel about a really good album versus like a really good pop single, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's a perfect way to encapsulate it. What's the biggest misconception, do you think, about your passion by the wider world, about vinyl records, collecting them or playing them or anything like that? Are there any misconceptions that stand out to you?
I think that like probably like people don't always know that you can get like basically any kind of music on records. Like I think a lot of people think of records and they think of like old school music or like classical or jazz, like 70s rock. But like all hip hop artists now like release records, and like I'm like really big into collecting things. Like I have like a cool Magic card collection. I have a cool record collection, things like that. And I think that it's just kind of cool, like that, like modern day artists like Freddie Gibbs, Kendrick Lamar, people like that are releasing like limited edition vinyl that's like in cool colors or like with cool jacket art or like is rare in some way. And I guess like the misconception is like any kind of music that you like for sure exists out there on vinyl, Yeah. And it's also not as expensive as you think. Like you can get setups for pretty cheap. It'll be more expensive obviously than like streaming something or buying a CD, but that's true of any hobby. Like if you want to get into it, there's an upfront cost to some degree.
I don't know if it's that much different, but do you prefer the older setups or like the kind of new setups for vinyl, like the just like the playing apparatus? I don't remember, like the turntable, I guess, right? That's what.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know tons about turntables. I've had the same one for a while, but I know that there's lots of different good ones. Mine's like a pretty old school looking one. It's like I use like a U-turn one, which is like really bare bones. It's basically just like the plate and then like the needle. But I guess I prefer the old school ones because part of it is I'm just like a hipster and want to have like the old school aesthetic, But I think that like the modern like DJ type of setups are like really cool and like play records just as well. And like you can also do like a lot of really cool like remixing and things like that with them. And like yeah, so I guess I prefer the old ones, but think the new ones are probably better.
I'm just realizing that you do kind of come across like boilerplate. You kind of do come across like a hipster. You wear Birkenstocks. You have a Carhartt hat. You listen to vinyl records.
Yeah, I have a septum piercing.
You're a vegetarian.
I think that for sure. I think the problem with me is that I'm basically just this stereotype of an insufferable hipster. But unfortunately, it's just really who I am and how I have been since
I disagree. I don't think you're insufferable, nor do I think you're a hipster. I think it just looks like that from the exterior.
Yeah. Well, just like the things I'm into are like the stereotype of a hipster.
Yeah.
But I mean, think I'm not too too
I think
acceptable.
I think the thing that differentiates you between a hipster and somebody that like loves like obscure things is the fact that if listening to vinyl became popular, you wouldn't stop listening to vinyl. If playing Magic the Gathering became like the new poker or, you know, the new TikTok or whatever like that makes no sense. You would still continue to do it because it's something you love. It's the things you love becoming popular does not, devalue them to you. It's just, it happens that you like things that most people aren't either aware of or don't particularly find noteworthy, which is...
Yeah, well, like mullets are in style now. I had a mullet twice at different points in my life because I thought they just looked cool. And like I have a mullet in my license picture. And I remember everyone used to always make fun of me. And now it's like so many people have mullets and like people think mullets are attractive. And I'm like, we're
reverting back to the 80s pretty hard.
Cool. Or the Birkenstock clogs, those became popular too. I have like these Birkenstock clogs I love to wear. And everyone used to always make fun of me. And then I saw freaking Seth Rogen wearing them on the cover of GQ. And I was like, who's laughing now? And now old ladies are always seeing me and they'll be like, ooh, I saw those clogs on the cover of GQ. And I'm like, yeah, dang right you did. I'm wearing them too.
That's right, girl.
Before Seth Rogen was. Shoot. So yeah, I guess I am a little bit of a hipster, but you know, only in the really cool, quirky, cute way, not in an annoying way.
Hipster, ladies.
Yeah.
Don't be intimidated.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you have a favorite non-obvious aspect to your love of vinyl that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I guess it's funny because I don't really have like a sense of smell, but like kind of like the smell, you know, like it's kind of like they has like a little bit of an aura about it, like a smell or like a taste almost in the air when you're listening to like a little bit of a crackle. I don't know. I just think that it's probably a lot of that's in my head, but I guess that's my underrated aspect is the all of the senses that get affected by listening to music, not just
it creates an ambiance. It's not just an audio experience. It just
I feel like sometimes halfway through answering these questions, I come up with a really smart answer, but I like that about an interview is that I'm like, wait, what is my answer to this?
Half of the answer is finding it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. From the beautiful and the passionate, we move to the obnoxious. Cyrus Cormankill, what is your preposterous peeve?
So this one was hard for me to think of because a lot of stuff kind of annoys me. But if I had to think of one that was just like so specific and preposterous, it's when people like use like expressions wrong. Like when people say "I could care less" instead of "I couldn't care less." It just drives me nuts. I can't stop thinking about it when they do it, and it's like I have to correct them. Or all the time this happens. This isn't even an expression, but like for example, it is grammatically incorrect to say that a person was hung. Right. So if you were like, if I was to say like, oh, this person was hanged to death, I could not say they were hung to death. They were for sure hanged to death, you know? And all the time in the news or books or whatever, people use that incorrectly. And that also drives me nuts. Like, oh my, I have to correct someone every time they do it. But it's hard for me to think of every example, but anytime anyone ever uses any expression incorrectly, it eats at my soul a little bit. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. There's the, if my father is out there listening, which is about 5%, there's this one that it drives him nuts, and that people say because it's just an older phrase, and he's an old man yelling at a cloud, and it's the proof of what people say is the proof is in the eating, and that's not true. The proof is in the pudding is what people say, sorry, and the actual phrase is the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I don't know what the hell it's referencing other than pudding, but that is like the correct way that one is supposed to be said. And it's like full elongated form. And I think a lot of it has to do with like when it comes to I couldn't care less as opposed to I could care less is I think it's just, so much of our timeline is kind of slimmed down. So like there's a lot of like kind of contractions and people like just kind of cut words or syllables out of, phrases just to like speed them up and like easier to like, put in the old memory slot. I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how language evolves over time, and it's okay for things to change and stuff too. It's okay for there to be progress, but I'll die on the hill of being an old man yelling at the couldn't care less cloud. Make sure you say it.
Yeah, I couldn't care less for sure.
Yeah,
but I mean, like that one. This is one of those interesting ones that cycle back to after it points out, is that there's so much of this evolution of language, which is just a natural progression. But at the same time, a lot of our evolution of language, I feel, it's not going backwards. It's going into a kind of dark room. So it's like it's kind of losing its value and its like knowledge by like the way we're progressing it, because like we're going from I couldn't care less to I could care less, but we're treating it like we're treating I could care less as if we said I couldn't care less, but we're losing that word and it's like what its literal meaning is. Same with, in fact, literal and what's the opposite? Shit.
Oh, like literally or figuratively?
Yeah, literally. We mean figuratively when we say literally, but we've literally said it so many times that literally now means literally and figuratively in Webster's dictionary. So
yeah, and it really does change.
Yeah, but like via
regardless is another one.
Yeah. It like there's not supposed to be a term irregardless, right? Is what the
I think it just isn't. It's not like really it's like a double negative, right?
Yeah,
or something.
We use irregardless interchangeably with regardless, which means one of them is moot, and we just we just continue to do that. And so on one hand, it's like yay, progression of language. On the other hand, it's like what? But we're not gaining anything. We're losing something because people decided to not look it up and say it to sound posh as shit, proper. We're just saying it incorrectly and moving on. It's like, shouldn't we get this right? Like we're just, there's change and then there's destruction. And I feel, and I guess arguably destruction is change, but instead of changing things in a beautiful growth path or anything like that, we're just almost devolving our language in certain aspects by like taking this approach. It's just kind of sad.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Evolution versus de-evolution, kind of like, one thing I think a lot about in like the last couple of years, and while this will make me sound so pretentious, is the movie Idiocracy, and the parallels that is drawn to our society. Not that people are idiots in general, but just like in terms of like media, I think has gotten dumbed down to some degree. And that's always been true. But I just am like into like news and things like that and how it's perceived. So
yeah, it's interesting how in certain ways it's dumbed down, and in other ways it feels like there's a bigger rift. It feels like back in the day, people needed to, because of, I don't know if it was just, the way it was media was put out back then, or where people lied on the spectrum of understanding media. But it seemed like it was a lot more, everything was in the center and there was less at the corners. And now it seems like there's more at the corners and less at the center.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it be,
it's a good way to think about it.
Intelligence or preference or skewing to eccentricities or whatever, but it does seem to kind of go to one or the other.
Yeah, more polarization.
Yeah,
in all aspects of life, which is interesting. I think like media has a lot of influence on like the polarization, like in politics and things like that too. But that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah. Interestingly, to talk about how like words change and like come about. Are you familiar with the term skosh?
Mm-mm. I haven't heard that before.
So a skosh is a small amount of things. Oh, I'll take a skosh of sugar in my tea, or whatever. But it comes a la the Korean War, when U.S. military combatants would go on leave. They would go to like Tokyo because it was nearby to South Korea, the way they could get away, where a lot of bases were set up. And while over there, during specifically the Korean War, they intermingled with a lot of the Japanese populace and started, conversating. And there was this word that I'm not going to try to pronounce in Japanese that sounds similar to skosh, that has a similar meaning. And so it got brought into the English lexicon and is now an English word, even though it is a slangified version of a foreign word meaning something relatively similar.
That's really cool. Yeah, I know that there's some other things like that. Well, English as a language is, I mean, I'm sure this is true about other languages too, but I only know English.
English is the biggest purveyor of this, of like, I like that word. I'm going to make one that sounds like it, or I'm just going to straight up yank it.
Yeah, good old imperialism. Stealing all languages.
Well, I mean,
given
English itself is also just like a bastardization to begin with. Like it in and of itself started off as like, from my understanding, is like this collection and coalescence of other languages. It doesn't particularly come on its own. Like these other languages seem to have, and there are also other languages probably do the same thing. But I mean, at its core, English is a Germanic language, but only to like, 70, 80%. It's like, it is in its origin a mishmash. So it only makes sense for us to, it's not like we're an imperialist language from the start. It's just that like it started as like the English language started as like that thing you used to do when you would go to like a pizza parlor where you take your fountain cup and just fill it with every single flavor and then like top it off with the one you actually liked the most, but couldn't make the decision of just having Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's a good analogy.
Thank you.
The English language is a beautiful mess for sure. I'm happy that I learned it natively and never had to attempt to learn it in any other way, I guess.
It definitely seems like the hardest language to ever pick up after you go through like normal, correct, just language layout of like French or Spanish or like Japanese. And then you just like go to English where everything is just from everywhere and there's no through line that holds steady, which I mean, it makes sense why there's no through line that holds steady if everything is from everywhere, because if you're borrowing from multiple different systems that have multiple different rules, of course they're not going to line up properly. Like you made a clock out of cheese and like spare wires. Yeah, like it doesn't hold up to
Yeah, so it's like it has all these exceptions, and also we have so many words that are pronounced the same and spelled differently, which I would not want to have to learn.
Homophones. I wonder. Yeah. I think there is, the weird thing is in like languages like Japanese and like Chinese, where they're like so tonal, is there's things that sound like homophones but aren't technically because of like the tonal pronunciation difference. But if you like look at them on paper, it's like, oh look, it's the same thing. It's like, well, it is, but actually no, it's not.
Yeah, that's a good question. You need to get a linguist. Is that the name?
Yes.
Of that?
Get a linguist up here.
Yeah.
All right. The next guest on the docket, we'll try to get a linguist.
Yeah, you have to, or a few.
All right. And with that, we're going to head to our second ad break, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, Cyrus Corman Gill is going to enter the lightning round. See you in a jiffy. Have you ever wanted to kill a small woodland creature or break a window but not had the physical strength? I know I have. Now introducing Rock. Rock comes in a variation of sizes and ready to use. Simply put Rock in your hand, raise it back to ear level, and release. See? You've got it! This ad does not condone the violence against small woodland creatures or windows, nor will it be held liable for any inability of use when coming into contact with paper. And we're back. Cyrus Corman Gill, are you ready to enter the lightning round?
Bang, bang, bang. Is there a god or like...
Lightning round.
Yeah, I'm honestly getting pretty sweaty in anticipation, so I'm looking forward to the lightning. Enter the lightning, the Thunderdome.
All right, put however much time it takes to bake this cookie on the clock. Cyrus, is there a god?
Yes.
Shakira's voice in Danny DeVito's body, or Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body?
Shakira's body in Danny DeVito's voice for sure.
Wine or beer?
Beer.
Are hot dogs sandwiches?
Yes.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Another amazing thing.
Lions, tigers, or bears?
Go Bears.
Is 0 a number?
Yes.
Would you rather give up cheese or naps?
Cheese.
Bow ties or suspenders?
Suspenders.
Have you ever paid more for a meal than you made in a week?
No.
No one's looking. Do you put the cart back or leave it in the parking lot?
Put it back.
If you had the power to see the future but couldn't change it, would you use it?
No.
Over or under?
Over.
Pineapple on pizza or fist fight?
Pineapple on pizza.
Can billionaires be ethical?
No.
Kill the spider or get an adult?
Neither.
Red or blue?
Blue.
Is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
Yeah, absolutely.
Salsa or Lindy Hop?
Salsa.
Dog or cat?
Cat.
Sunny side up, scrambled, or hard boiled?
Scrambled.
Which do you max out first? Intelligence, charisma, or strength?
Charisma.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
Yes.
Pizza or pasta?
Pasta.
Popsicle or Klondike bar?
Popsicle.
Are we alone in the universe?
No.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
Gilbert Gottfried. No, Fran Drescher. Sorry.
Are Cheez-Its addicting?
Yes.
Kanye.
Yes.
Boneless or bone-in wings?
Bone in.
Congratulations, Cyrus Gorman-Gill. You've survived the lightning round. What lightning round question would you like to ask me and in turn be asked of future guests?
Tacos or burritos?
Burritos. I know I'm wrong, but it's burritos all the way, baby.
Yeah,
There's something about being able to just it's all there. It's, you know, all like tucked in and it's perfectly sealed. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's my favorite
Tacos. It's
food.
a little bit of messy. It's still great. I love me a good taco, but
Yeah.
you know, there's like the mess. I have to pick that one up, ingest it. My hands are now dirty. That's a problem. And then I pick up another, and like it's the same problem over and over. Where it's like I hold a burrito, my hands might get messy, but I'm gonna finish the burrito and then deal with it.
Yeah.
It's like compact and yeah, I don't know.
And breakfast burritos are way more common than breakfast tacos, and I love breakfast burritos, so that's another point in their favor.
Anything you want to plug, recommend, places people could find you or your content, Cyrus?
Yeah, well, I don't play too much Magic the Gathering anymore, but I am still pretty active on Twitter at CyrusCGMTG. I like to post about, you know, my thoughts, magic, whatever. I also do sometimes stream at twitch.tv/CyrusCG. And you should just follow me there anyways, just in case you get to interact with me and ask me more cool questions like Isaac Ike did today.
Are you still doing the podcast?
Nah, I had a podcast with my friend Eric, who I believe is also a guest on the show. But
Was the first guest?
Yeah, even better. We only did 10 episodes though, and it was a while ago.
Okay. Well, it was a great one. I enjoyed listening to it well last
Top
week.
Down Legacy, if you would like to listen to. Also, thank you. Magic the Gathering Legacy content from a few years ago.
Listen to two great guys just chitter chatter.
Yeah, even better. A better way to put it.
Cool. Well, thank you, Cyrus, for being my guest today. And special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And especially thank you, everybody listening at home, or wherever you found time to appreciate this. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry. We put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on Soundcloud at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves, or on YouTube at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast, all one word with an ampersand in the middle. And remember, folks, one-legged people aren't handicapped. They're just very committed hopscotch enthusiasts with no chill. Have a good one.